Hey guys, welcome back to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nichole Eaton, author of the books Rock Your Soul and Rock Your Comeback coming out this summer, and intuitive therapist. And I'm here to remind you of your power. And I have an interesting topic today. I'm curious what you guys will think about it. It was a question posed to me because obviously I'm diehard about the internal work I do. I love to feel happy. I love to feel in a good mood. This is coming from somebody who dealt with depression for a long time. So knowing that I can change that for myself feels so empowering, so good. And I just want everybody to have that. I want everybody to have access to feeling better. And so I do a lot of studying and research on the mind, on the brain, on energy, on spirituality, the connection with the universe, on manifestation, so that I can bring it to you so that you can feel empowered to not only feel better on the inside and feel like you have an insane love for yourself, but also to just better your life overall. That's something I am deeply freaking passionate about. And maybe a week or two ago, I had a conversation with somebody I don't know well. And they're like, wow, you're really into that self-help stuff, eh? It's my life. And find it interesting when people aren't. Okay. I find it interesting when people aren't interested in improving their selves, their lives, their space. And it doesn't mean you have to be diehard into self-help to do that. But here's how I look at it. And here's what I notice for people who aren't interested in growth is that Michael Singer, actually, he is the author of The Untethered Soul. And he had this example that just spoke to me. It was immediately after that conversation, I was like, that makes so much sense. If you neglect anything, it will go bad. If you don't brush your teeth, your teeth will rot. If you put the gas pedal, but you never touch the steering wheel, you're going to drive off the road. And if you just ignored everything around your house, it would be dusty. It would be dirty. You would have stuff. You would have laundry piled to the ceilings and the dishes would be stacked and it would be a freaking mess. And so when we neglect our internal world, when we never stop to ask, what am I thinking and why? What is my power here and how do I activate it? When we never feel empowered or connected to ourselves, or it's really hard to connect to others. It's really hard to trust the universe. It's really hard to live a better life. And it's really hard because we all go through hard moments in our lives. We all go through challenges. We all go through heaviness, poor relationships, bad situations. We all have that. And so when we don't ever address that, we develop coping skills that are negative. We develop self-talk that's negative. We develop fears that can control and ruin our lives. And so it gets freaking messy. If you don't clean up, it will be messy. And so I was thinking a lot about that of okay, so if you never really looked at what you're thinking in your mind, it'd be a freaking mess in there. And what would happen if it's a mess? Well, I mean, for me, a mess looks like a low vibration, right? When things are messy, it doesn't feel good. When your house is messy, it doesn't feel good. If you didn't brush your teeth forever, it wouldn't feel good. It would be gross. Anything you neglect, it won't feel good. And our power is always coming back to ourselves so that we can feel better, so that we feel clear, we feel clean, we feel light, we feel in a good mood, we have positive relationships, we're in a job that feels good and aligned and that we love, and we're not letting fears and worries and sadness control our future. A really interesting thing, because when we don't pay attention to our inner world, we grasp and try to control our external world. For the people who aren't doing the work, doing anything to better themselves. And again, you don't have to do self-help. Everybody's growth and improvement looks different. Okay. But if you're not doing it, what happens is you're trying to control everything around you because you are taking the only nuggets of joy and the only nuggets of high frequency, and you're grasping onto them because that's the way you feel better, is by the things outside of you. And so if you're only grasping onto the things that feel better outside of you, then that puts you at high risk, because the things outside of you always have permission to leave. They always have the permission to go. People change, they leave. Jobs change, they let you go. There's moves, there's evictions, there's a lot outside of you that can happen. And then unless you have that space cleaned up, solid, and you know how to find joy, then everything outside of you impacts your mood. And that's a vulnerable place to be. And I like being vulnerable, but I don't like being that vulnerable. It is a vulnerable place to be letting your external circumstances control you and to control your joy. And so we have to start doing the work inside, because otherwise we're if you're catching yourself trying to control things, that's your big red flag to come back within, because everything out there is not what makes you happy. Sure, people can add joy to our lives. Absolutely. Jobs can feel really good. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, if that chooses to go, are you still okay? Are you still feeding that story of not good enough as evidenced by your external situations leaving or exiting? So when you're feeling like you're grasping onto an external circumstance, I want you to give yourself that red flag and say, okay, how am I going to come back in? What do I need to do for me? What do I need to do so that I'm creating within myself that high frequency, better mood, better version of myself that I feel strong in, that I feel proud of, that I feel excited for? How does that come from me? I'm a big advocate that you either create your life or your life creates you. And what a risk. If you're only here doing this once, which I guess I believe in reincarnation, but for the sake of argument, if you're only here doing it once, are you going to let your life create you, or are you going to create it? And if you can create it or be a part in it. One of my favorite things about manifestation is the magic it brings to my life. The silly moment where I've had a thought and then I see that thought within hours come to life, come to fruition. The silly moment where I've had just a desire and watched everything fall into place to make that happen. It feels fun. It feels like magic, and it feels empowering to know that the way we view the world shapes what we see. And that's not just true for manifestation. That's true for our thoughts. That's true for the way we think about it. So we can always come back to our power, but we have to start cleaning up that internal space. We have to be willing to explore our fears. We have to be willing to sit with them and hold their hand and figure it out. But most importantly, we have to take radical responsibility for our joy and stop blaming everything around us. Like, if you're somebody right now who's looking at the government like it's their fault I'm in this mood, it's because I can't have this, this, and this. Are you going to waste your whole life feeling that way? Are you going to play the victim to everything in your life? Are you going to let every external circumstance, including something that really doesn't reach out and touch you, doesn't give you a hug and tuck you in at night? Are you going to let that destroy your mood and your life experience? Because if, God forbid, something happened tomorrow, would that be enough? Would you feel like you've done the things you came here to do? So yeah, I am diehard about mindset. I am a little intense and extreme with it. I do way more than most people do. You do not have to do what I do for things to feel better and for you to feel happy. I do it because I love it. I do it because it feels good and I love feeling good. And I do it because I want to show everybody else that you don't have to sit in sadness and you don't have to sit in gripping something that isn't serving you anymore, and that you don't have to be anxious and trying to control the world around you, and that you can create something incredible inside of you. And part of that is accepting what is. It's taking responsibility, but also accepting, okay, here I am right now. Am I creating negative energy around what is? How can I improve it? What would be nice? What would be fun? What would be exciting? What would feel a little bit better? What makes me feel a little bit better every day? Our power lies in being willing to not feed into the story that we're victims to the universe, to the world. Sure, you can't control everything. And sure, I've seen people try to control everything through manifestation, which is still not exactly what manifestation is, and it's not exactly what is going to get you to a better place. And just to riff on that for a second, when I'm talking about controlling things through manifestation, when you are trying to obsessively focus on something positive, it usually is coming from a place of desperation or scarcity. You're calling it manifestation, but you're afraid and you're trying. And so sometimes we need to go into a mode where we just accept what is, accept that we do desire that, accept that it isn't in our life right now, and be willing to put ourselves in a better energy to see if it's the right fit, because it might not be. The universe gives a lot of gifts, and sometimes the best gifts are the things that the universe didn't give you. And you don't know it till later. You don't know it until the better option comes back. You don't know until you grow in the way you were meant to grow, to discover the thing about yourself that you were meant to discover. So when you're thinking about your power, when you're thinking about, one of the biggest things that I advocate for, which is so funny because I'm talking about mindset, but I'm also not. I'm talking about the connection with the universe. Even when I was in traditional counseling, I would notice that people who had a connection with God, source, whatever you believe in, felt better quicker, because I think there is something about letting go and trusting the universe to help you figure things out, and not to have to figure things out, and not to have to grasp anything, because you trust that even if something goes, that something better will come. Like, the trust with the universe is a game changer. It's a game changer for your mood. It's a game changer for your life. It's a game changer for talking about and cleaning up this internal mess. It's a game changer for not clinging to things, for not over attaching to things. It's a game changer for trusting that if something is removed, that we can accept it and feel sad and walk through that process. But then we can also shift into a space where you can say, okay, universe, what's next? What else do you have for me? What might be a better fit for me? Cleaning up that internal mess comes with paying attention. How am I feeling today? What things am I consuming? What am I watching? What's my responsibility? And when we can find our responsibility, that's our power. When we can take a responsibility, that's your power. I always use this quote. I've used it in, well, both books now. This quote makes an appearance in both books, which is why I'm so obsessed with it. Or I guess that tells you how much I am obsessed with it. But Jen Sincero, in her book, You Are a Badass, wrote, "It's not your fault if you're fucked up. It's your fault if you stay fucked up." You have the power at any moment to say, okay, I am not what happened to me. I'm going to attend to the things that I'm creating. I am going to create joy within my life. I am going to clean up the internal mess because I'm worth it, because I like a tidy house, because I like when things are clean and orderly and it feels better to me. So what is my first step in doing that? My first step is in taking responsibility for my life, looking at it and knowing that I have the power to make some changes. Unless you are a child under 18, you have the power to make changes. And not to say kids under 18 can't, just saying that they have a little bit more of things controlling them around them. But you have the power to make changes. You have the power to clean up the internal mess. And one of my things I'll advocate outside of trusting the universe and working on that trust. And I think also I'll say too, is that manifestation is way more powerful and feels more fun when you have a connection with the universe. So meditation's a great gateway to that. It's a great gateway for internal reflection and just creating time in your day to check in and say, how am I feeling? What would make me feel a little bit better today? What would feel nice? What would feel fun? I'll always ask those questions. I actually had something I was procrastinating on earlier, and I was like, what would make me want to do this right now? What would make it more fun or exciting for me to do? So I use those questions regularly, which is why I'm always asking them in the podcast, right? What would be more fun? What would make it exciting? Because sometimes we do have to do things we don't want to do. But our job is to come back and take our power back by leveling up and taking responsibility for where we're at, taking responsibility for our insides, for our mood, and then stepping the fuck back into our power. This is like how you claim your comeback, really, is you are willing to look at what's in there. Because for some people too, it's easier to not. We just avoid it. And then it's like a bunch of stuff happened and you're just reacting and responding all over the place and everything triggers you. And if you don't come back within, it's safe to trust yourself and it's safe to let yourself be guided. Unless you have a major mental health disorder. That's the only time I won't advocate for that, is if you have like schizophrenia, this isn't your podcast, right? Probably not the best fit for you, but maybe it is. I don't know. But what I'll say for you is there's not a lot of exceptions to the rule that you can create a happier, more empowered life by coming back within, deciding what you want, deciding what it looks like, taking responsibility, accepting what is, processing through those old things, old stories, creating habits that support you, and letting the universe support you along the way. I want you to see the magic and I want you to see the joy and I want you to feel good and alive. And I want it to be so contagious that other people are asking you, what are you doing? And it always happens. Like, why are you so happy? What are you doing? I have friends who don't believe in, they don't believe in God. They don't believe in the universe, but they are always like, just always calm and you're always happy. And I'm like, yeah, I wasn't for a long time though. It took a lot of work to get here. And I'll be very clear about that. It took a lot of work to get here, which is why I'm so dedicated and which is why I don't just know this information, but I've lived it. I think this is good. And I think this will be helpful for whoever needs to hear it, is that it's an inside job. You can't grip onto things. And the more you're gripping, the more of the work you need to do on the inside. If you catch yourself trying to control what's going on around you and grasping and anxiety about things going or coming, come back within, read some books that feel inspiring, learn, explore, and I think you're going to see a lot more changes. Anyway, thank you for always supporting me, for always listening, for always tuning in. I hope this was helpful. And I have a special project I've been working on and I'm super excited to share it with you guys. Back 10 years ago, I would have never been able to afford coaches and I would never been able to afford courses and everything just seemed so expensive. And I want to make feeling better, easier and cheaper and more accessible to everybody. So I'm going to be putting every single course I've ever made out to you for like $20. So if you are part of my email list, you're going to hear about it and see it first. If you listen to this podcast, you're going to hear about it and see it first, but that will come with some other opportunities to just level up your life, to make your comeback. And yeah, I can't wait to share this project with you. So I'll talk a little bit more about that next week and I wish you well. Bye.